Tartisan Nickel is a Canadian resource company focused on advancing a high-grade nickel and copper asset in Ontario towards development. The company's flagship project, the Kenbridge Nickel Copper Project, already hosts a defined mineral resource, a completed preliminary economic assessment, and active infrastructure development. In simple terms, Tartisan owns a nickel deposit in a mining-friendly jurisdiction and is doing the work required to move it from known and measured towards potential production. And that matters now because nickel and copper are strategic metals for electric vehicles, battery supply chains, and North American manufacturers are actively seeking secure domestic sources. Kenbridge is already defined, permitted for continued advancement, and located in an emerging North American nickel district, putting in a position that larger industry players will probably become interested in as consolidation accelerates. And some key highlights: 146 million pounds of nickel, 78 million pounds of copper. That nickel is class one, and extensive work has been done over 100,000 meters of drilling, over 600 holes. And today we had another huge hole come in. That's what we're going to talk about. Mark, welcome back to Agoracom, my friend.
Thanks for having me back on, George.
Hey, look, you keep hitting it. You keep doing great stuff. Of course, we're going to keep having you back on. Big picture, before we get into your drill results, and they were pretty great, let's talk about the fact that you already have 146 million pounds of nickel and 78 million pounds of copper, something the world is going to need a lot of. Your nickel is class one. Let's talk about the nickel first, because obviously the name of the company is Tarzan Nickel. Talk about the size of what you got and class one and why that's so important.
Yeah, we're in a favorable jurisdiction, northwestern Ontario, which hosts class one nickel sulfide, which we people call battery grade these days. We know what battery grade means now that, especially with the advent of AI and a lot of electrification, there's the need for storage of electricity when in off-peak markets, shall we say. So um, charge your batteries at night when it's cheaper, utilize during the day when it's more expensive. And what we're aiming to do at Tartisan is bring this into the mainstream of a small capex class one producer of nickel and copper.
And a lot of people are trying to talk buzzwords in big game. You know, George Com nickel, George Com copper, but you guys are the real deal. You've had, like I said in the intro, 100,000, over 100, about 100,000 meters of drilling, over 600 holes. So you're not a Johnny come lately. Uh, since you've been doing this for so long, you're obviously dedicated. You saw this long before most people, even when it was difficult to be that visionary. What's the ultimate plan and ETA? Like, look, you could do another 100,000 meters of drilling, and any company could for years and years. But what's the ultimate plan and a ballpark ETA for shareholders and prospective investors to keep in mind?
Yeah, the bigger picture is to expand the resource, make our mineral resource estimate larger to ultimately expand the mine life. So basically around a 9 to 10 year mine life right now. We want to get that into double digits, meaning 14, 15 years minimally. And that's why we've got to continue to drill baby drill here, because at the end of the day, we need to get into this down dip extension. We believe it goes a lot deeper than the 1100 odd meters that our deepest holes go today. In fact, we think it probably can go down another kilometer and a half. And that's essentially what the focus of this drill program has been, to try and test this down dip extension to ultimately add to the mine life. And that's the only way you do that, is to increase the resource. So we've had some pretty decent success over the last 60 days here. And certainly you've seen hole two now come out today, where we've got 11 odd meters of over 1% and have still a million odd tons of inferred there in that in the inferred category, which grades over 1%, which we'd like to firm up and help solidify our resource to ultimately bring the mine life greater. Now, timelines, Summer of 2026 is when we'd like to get into a pre-feasibility study. That's going to help share with the world our economics and further define the actual costs, and then be able for us to, as we add to our drill results here, increase this mine life. Base studies have been ongoing from 2021, basically. So we've got 4 or 5 years of studies done. We also can utilize the studies that were done back in 2010 and to 2015 by Canadian Aero. Um, and with the road now basically accessible into our core shack and the drill rigs, 45-minute drive in from the core shack or from the paved highway to the core shack. There's a lot of the right elements seem to be coming together here, and going to make this an exciting time for shareholders of Tartisan.
And you're getting paid for that time almost, right? Because the price of copper keeps climbing, nickel's made a nice recovery, so you're almost getting paid as far as balance sheet asset value in the ground while that's happening. And your stock price kind of reflects that, right, Mark? You're at multi-year highs right now. So this isn't just Mark Appleby talking his own book. The market is a voting mechanism, and it seems to be voting in your favor right now.
Yeah, we've had a fairly decent climb since early December, November. Um, And I think that's a reflection of really getting back into business here with the drill rig and getting the drill turning and getting actively into the news flow as well, with sort of milestones that are coming shareholders' ways now, and they appreciate the action and the get up and go now in the stock. And certainly as we come into the spring summer, there's going to be loads of information coming your way. With what we've just done in our acquisition of this Apex um, piece of property that's contiguous to our land package, also contiguous to the former Mabron gold mine. So there is a historical resource there that we would like to prove up: 250,000 odd tons of 1.03% copper, 0.62% nickel, and various isolated gold showings there as well that historically have been prospected. And we'd like to get back into all of that prospecting and some of this greenfields work come this spring, summer. Even to the point of potentially reviewing the sampling and the trenching that was there. That'll be reflected in our new deck that will be coming out here shortly for shareholders, and potentially getting a drill rig involved this summer.
So you're gonna have your hands full, but naturally Kenbridge is the flagship, and that's the horse that you're gonna ride out on. Let's talk about the drill results. Not very many of us are geologists, so I'm gonna say the numbers once, but I'm gonna ask you to put it in perspective, because if we talk about the numbers, most people use that as go to sleep mechanism. But 11 meters of 1.05% nickel, 0.33% copper, including 2 meters of 4.8%. I'm rounding here, 4.8% nickel, 1.25% copper. And you also talked about 3.5 meters of 2.9% nickel and 0.8% copper. So those sound big. We're not geologists, but those of us who have a little bit, those sound pretty good. Help us put that into perspective in terms of what you've been intersecting so far, what that means for your region there, relative to maybe other projects.
Yeah, George, not to mention that we had our first drill hole that had similar results and even better grade in a couple of them. Similarly, like 10.7 meters of 1.58% nickel, 0.8% copper, and some high grade intersections where we had 3% nickel and 2% nickel. So, the big deal about this is that we're now starting to bring this million tons in the inferred category that grades over 1% over into the measured and indicated category as well. So that helps us solidify the overall integrity of the resource. Remembering that part of the game plan here is to go to pre-feasibility in the summer of 2026. So that will be one of the certainly one of the requests of the engineering groups that would like us to further firm up the resource to bring some of that inferred over. So we're kind of, heading them off at the pass a little bit by getting some of that work done now. And as we get into the holes going forward, you're going to see that the holes are going deeper and deeper, to the point now where we finished hole 3, that's in for assay. Hole 4 is almost complete. Then hole 5 begins, and we're now going to be drilling essentially underneath um, the shaft that's there. So, again,
How far
remember,
down you going?
yeah, you're going to end up going to roughly 1,100 meters in this phase 1 drill program. With the hope that phase 2 drill program gets us into much deeper holes going forward. So, these gabbro style deposits are somewhat hourglass shaped, so you can kind of picture that below the shaft, the 3 compartment shaft that exists there at Kenbridge, it sort of starts to pinch in, and then we believe through our geophysics that it starts to widen out. So this is a classic gabbro style in the sense that the deeper you go, the higher the grade it gets, and the more compelling the resource becomes. Ultimately, we want to get that mine life out to 15 plus years. Um, and hopefully, while we're doing this, we can get a little bit of joy in the nickel price going forward.
And if you guys are right about your theory, um, do you think you'll be able to get there? If your theory is correct, that's an hourglass, and it's going to widen out once you go a little further down. Should that get you to the 14, 15 year mine life mark? Because you add so many more resources that it gets you to the 14, 15 year
Yeah, I think
goal.
we can start by getting into sort of a 25, heading towards a 50% increase in the resource, and that certainly gets
Wow.
us
Wow.
pretty darn close. So there's a lot of compelling things and reasons why we need to keep at this and get the money on the end of the drill bit.
And I was going to ask you a question that it just skipped my mind right now. But oh, this is what I want to ask you. High grade, because for a lot of us, we don't know the numbers, but anything above what 0.6% nickel is considered high grade.
Yeah, class 1 nickel deposits are high grade when you get over zero point 0.6, basically, and our average grade in these holes, you can see that there's a significant amount of nickel that's sort of it's 1% or greater. And so these are holes that are meaningful, been a worthwhile exercise in us drilling them, and certainly compelling for people to understand that we've got the goods here. So, now it's a matter of going deeper and continuing on here with some geophysics in April. So the holes that we have done will all have borehole geophysics done on them and be interpreted, and that helps guide the drill bit in the future.
Yeah, these first two drill holes of the year, suffice to say, have given you guys even more confidence that you're right in your theory, and you're drilling in the right places.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll see that as we get into hole 3 and hole 4 results, we hope. Certainly hole 3 in for assay, hoping to have that results and released ahead of PDAC, or certainly during PDAC, and same with hole 4. So that's hole 4 is pretty much complete now, or certainly will be by the weekend here. And then hole 5. So yeah, it's these are interesting times, and re-rating our company is where it's at as we head towards this pre-feasibility, and that's going to be a significant milestone for the company.
I know it's early, Mark, but you already had a sizable resource, and now you've hit some nice drill results. I mean, today the most recent one, it's still early, but have you been getting phone calls from the industry on the first drill hole results? Are you getting more and more attention, perhaps from majors or bigger companies, in the industry, or is it too early for all that?
No, definitely more phone calls on hole one drill results than I've had in a significant period of time. So there's definitely people watching us. You can also see sort of social media activity picking up where people are actually, reading articles and getting involved. So with following the story and some emails, et cetera, coming back. So it's spurring some attention. It's spurring some folks on the money side that have asked, well, would you be doing something in the future here on the money side? Maybe there's room to participate. So, these are good things to happen as opposed to, crickets. So, yeah, we're encouraged by all that.
And by the way, you have been putting your money where your mouth is. It's great now that you're getting those phone calls and you're getting the interest because it wasn't always that easy. So I think it's important to kind of mention that you've never switched gears. You never went to Tartisan cannabis and Tartisan blockchain and took the latest trends. You knew what you had and you knew where you want to get at. And when times are tough, it was you that was putting a lot of the money down. So I want to make sure investors know that but maybe you want to add a little bit to that, Mark, about how you've been putting your money where your mouth is as an indication of you're not a fool, you're confident in what you've got.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of insiders and family and friends that have a significant position in the company, and certainly you can wrap your arms around 70% of it. And they're here for the longer haul. This isn't a quick investment. This is to the finish line. We believe that M&A will become a factor in our world here. You certainly, I've been hearing noises about um, people potentially amalgamating some M&A activity. I think with 6%, $6 copper now, that's helping us, given that half of what we have is copper. And now if we could get our nickel price trending higher, you get nickel towards $10, that certainly helps the M&A activity world, where it makes sense for a few companies to get together to create a much bigger picture.
And that's a perfect segue to my question, which is let's talk about the macro outlook for nickel and copper. We know it's kind of driving nickel, so we don't need to go too deep into that. But talk to us about the supply demand, and then we'll go to copper after that. But let's talk about the supply demand factors for nickel and what may lead to $10 nickel. And if that's your prediction, I mean, like you can make a prediction. Give us the basis for what you see for nickel prices and demand going forward.
Yeah, well, we only had a crystal ball, but I think, as recent as today, this morning in the news, Indonesia dialing back nickel production to try and firm up the nickel price, and certainly they've been caught in not utilizing best practices, shall we say, and whether it's pollution or just safety concerns of how they've been operating. There's a number of nickel supply folks that are being asked to either shut down or scale it back. So, we're anticipating that there will be a rise in the nickel price in 2026. Certainly, if we could get back into this 8.5, $9 range sooner rather than later, I think that goes a long way. $10 nickel for us is kind of a sweet spot um, in that nickel price. And I think depending what happens, whether it's from a tariff standpoint or some basic shutdowns in the supply, you can see there's a very elastic effect in the price of nickel. So, as fast as it went down, and we certainly were hovering in that $10 category for some period of time, um, it can go from like I think we're $8 today or thereabouts, can go up somewhat precipitously. When Tartisan acquired the Kenbridge nickel deposit back in 2018, we were shy of $4. So it was 390 when we did that deal. So, you can see where we are today. It's I think, the world need for stainless steel and nickel is ever increasing, and certainly as it is for copper. The copper mines are in demand, and for electrification, battery storage, the whole auto industry, the housing scene all requires copper. So we feel that we're in a good space and that the economics are gonna come to pass here for us. And meanwhile, we need to continue to get to the point where we become an attractive candidate through increased mine life and getting that resource as large as possible.
Politics aside, how much has Trump helped you guys on this side, on the nickel and copper side? Because he's basically sending a signal out that we don't want critical minerals coming out of the East, right? Out of Asia. Let's face it, he's been pretty clear about that. Does that make Tartisan and the others in your region there that you're talking about even more valuable?
Well, he certainly made critical minerals a matter of national security in the United States. You'll see that, the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, the Department of War, actively involved in the critical mineral space now, and through helping certain companies with government grants to help them get to the next step of building that resource or putting in some infrastructure. You're going to start to see more and more of that, I think. As well as recently talking about creating a critical mineral stockpile. So you'll see that the world and is using critical minerals as bargaining chips, and that's leverage that the United States doesn't necessarily want to have to contend with. And the more self-reliant they can become, I think, the greater bargaining power they have. So I think you're going to see an ever increasing focus on critical mineral strategy, both in the US, but certainly in Canada as well. Um, it's a
Is,
hot
is,
topic these days.
is Tartisan in position yet to apply for any of those grants coming out of the Department of War and other departments in the US, or are you still just on the smaller side and maybe not eligible yet?
Yeah, it's a matter of sort of jurisdiction and how, it's not impossible to get an investment, but through a secondary party that may be based in the United States, for example. Um, we brought on a military expert in as an advisor here. He's a retired Army Colonel, Jack Jacobs. He's a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, and a business guy. And so we're going to be lifting over rocks here and trying to get in to see as many individuals, institutions, family offices, government agencies as possible in the coming weeks and months as we look to find partners and strategic investors, strategic partners in bringing this to the next level. So, we look forward to all of that, and certainly it's creating a lot of excitement. And I mean, almost a day doesn't go by where you don't hear a president or a prime minister or a premier talking about the critical mineral space and how important it is to our economy and integrating these into the economy
Yeah.
and becoming more self-reliant.
I mean, we're racing towards AI, and that's going to require a lot of energy storage, all sorts of things. and the critical minerals are. I mean, that had to be a great boost that none of us were really expecting 2 3 years ago, right? We didn't see this, and now suddenly the race is on, and copper is going to be huge demand.
Well, absolutely. And as you said, when we purchased the deal in 2018, everyone was talking about cannabis and Bitcoin and blockchain. And now there's a lot of folks in this space. I think you're going to have now seeing it through the VR, the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference, PDAC, I think this year will be pretty significant. And just
Oh yeah.
not vendors, but a lot of people now looking to find from an investment standpoint, small, medium, large investors looking to put some cash to work in this space.
One more political matter to talk about also, and this is unique to Canada, but it's very important to have great relations with the First Nations because that can make or break projects sometimes. And you guys have a pretty good relationship there as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it was instrumental in getting our access road um, into construction phase. There's a lot of consultation that has to occur in the process of the road, but certainly also involved with letting everyone know about what we're up to development wise of this resource. So there's 7 different First Nations communities that we're consulting with on this one particular project, the Kenbridge Nickel Copper project, and they're a big part of it. And certainly they're seeing now through the opening up of the Ring of Fire and other projects that you can you can either sit and watch or you can come and help and participate, but do it in the right and meaningful way, and become partners in essence. Um, as you try and build out what's going on in their communities. So without their support, things become a whole lot more difficult, certainly.
Mark, you've got the resource, you've got nickel, you've got copper, you've got the grade, you've got the neighborhood where you are is you're surrounded by other great companies. You got First Nation support. You got the macro picture is in your favor. Great first two drill holes here in 2026. It seems like, does it seem like 2026 is the year that things really come to a head for Tartisan here? And what do you think if all goes well? Nothing goes perfect, right? The best laid plans, have some glitches in them here and there, but it seems like for the most part, you guys got a pretty good handle of your direction, where you're going, what your plan is. If everything goes pretty well according to plan, and we're sitting here at the end of 2026, what do you think Tartisan looks like at that point? I'm not talking about stock price because you're not even allowed to say that anyways. Or you could, I guess you could. I'm not sure, but we don't want to do that. But how does the company itself look in terms of, the size of the resource, where you're at in terms of are you at the mine life that you want, which makes it attractive to sell or maybe put in production on your I have no idea. What does it look like in just a few short months, 9 months from now?
Yeah, I think the near-term goals are really to try and get this resource bigger, 25% plus larger, um, and get into pre-feasibility in this summer, and keep the drill going. We'd like to. Uh, we may have a little break in the spring melt here, but we would like to enter into the phase 2 drill program, get into deeper holes. Potentially, if money works, we could get into some potential advanced exploration and directional drilling. If we had our wish list, shall we say. But I think, if we could get into graduate from the phase 1 into the phase 2 drill program to get to the 25% plus increase in the resource, and let's hope for greater. I mean, 50% or more is is the direction we want to go. But then be able to have a pre-feasibility well underway this summer, knowing that pre-fees, that can be a 12 to 18-month process. Certainly recategorizes us for government assistance, grant money in that endeavor, and re-rates the company. So a lot more eyeballs on the deal. Hopefully by then you start to see a little bit of a turn in our favorite commodity here, which is nickel, and allow us to rapidly expand the development here. So there's lots on the go and lots of plans in the works for 2026.
Well, Mark, no one deserves what's happened. How things have really turned around the last 8 weeks here more than you, your insider team of investors who have continued to fund the company, and your loyal shareholders who have stayed by your side and have stayed with you. So it's February the 11th, and PDAC is 2.5 weeks away. So it's safe to say that with holes 3 and 4, you and I are going to have a lot more FaceTime in the next 2 to 3 weeks as those come out. So I'll leave our interview there, and I'll say can't wait to have you back for holes 3 and/or 4, depending on when they come out. It might be one hole at a time. And thanks for joining us, Mark. And again, congratulations, man. It couldn't happen to a nicer guy, nicer group who have stuck it out. Like you said, back in 2018, it was all about blockchain and cannabis and things like that. And we see where the cannabis guys are, and now we see where you are on the nickel side. So thanks so much for joining us today. And if you have any last words, go ahead. Otherwise, we'll just sign off there.
Yeah, no, thank you, George, very much. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to our future conversations and just talking about where we're at and where we're going. I think shareholders appreciate it, and certainly appreciate your candor and enthusiasm and your support.
For everyone at home, thanks for joining us. Hope you found this to be really valuable. If you don't already have Tartisan on your radar, make sure it's on your radar, especially with everything Mark is talking about that's going to be happening over the next 2 3 weeks into PDAC and right into the summer. If you believe in the future nickel, if you believe in the future of copper, and you love the fact that they're in the most friendly jurisdiction almost possible, and right pretty close to the United States, then make sure you follow and watch for our next interview. Until then, thanks for joining us. Have a great day. See you next time.
Hey, small cap fam! I hope you loved this interview because more than a dozen people were involved in its production for the sole purpose of making you happy. If so, can you take a moment to support both our awesome guest company and Agoracom? Your engagement means the world to us. First, if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up by tapping that like button. It's a small gesture that helps this interview reach even more potential investors to discover today's guest. Second, we would love to hear your feedback on this interview, so please leave a comment below. Be sure to keep it clean, but feel free to poke fun at George. If you loved what you heard on today's video and want to dig into our guest company right away, take a look at the links in the description below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to never miss another great Agoracom small cap video. Thank you so much. We couldn't do any of this without you. Make sure to come back soon.